Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse, episode 1.11. Today is Monday, March the 10th, 2014, and my name is Graham Perrow. With me, as always, are Melissa Daphne and Tyler Fitch. We have the Q&A app going, so if you join us on our Google Plus page, you should be able to ask questions from there, and we will get to them at some point during the show. So on to the show, and I guess I'll let Melissa start with this one because she's got likely the most to say. Big changes in Colorado. I'll just list all the changes to start with, and then Melissa, I'll let you go. The whole coaching staff, Bob Hamley, Ed Como, and Sean Ferris, were all let go. Brought in, I believe that's actually an interim coaching staff, are former Rock players, former Ontario Raiders players, and notably former Mammoth players, Chris Gill, Pat Coyle, and Dan Stroop. Stroop has some coaching experience at the NLL level. He was an assistant coach with the Stealth a year or two ago, I think it was. The others don't have any NLL coaching experience, but they've all been coaching minor lacrosse in British Columbia. They also released Dean Hill, and they signed Jamie Shuchuk. So, Melissa, what do you think?
Man, this was just a crazy week. It was really, I think it was extra crazy for me because I was in Mexico City last week, so of course I was removed from pretty much everything. And so I'd log on, and it's like, holy cow, there's what? What's going on? Something had to be done. I mean, it's like we were talking about a few weeks ago when you have an all-star team and you can't seem to win, who's at fault? You know, who is lacking in the leadership that, the team needs. And so when the fact that Bob Hamley was fired didn't surprise me, but on the same token, knowing what a good coach Hamley is and having seen him coach teams to championships, it's surprising how much he struggled with this team. The replacements was an even bigger surprise. I definitely was thinking maybe Dave Pym was on the short list. I would never have guessed Stroop, Coyle, and Gill. That just wouldn't even have crossed my mind. It was like we were trying to put the 2016 back. I've always liked Gill and Stroop. I think they're really smart guys, really nice guys. Coyle I never talked to very much, so I really don't know much about him outside of watching him play, and I've definitely heard enough stories. I think they're all three well enough respected that they're definitely going to command some attention and be able to really bring that experience to the table, even if they haven't coached. It's going to be interesting. Right now, it sounds like none of them are actually considered the head coach. They're all kind of sharing the duties. So I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out. I think at some point, one of them is going to have to be, nope, this is the coach, you two are the assistants, and that's going to be the way it is, because otherwise you got three cooks in the kitchen, and at some point they're going to start disagreeing on how something needs to be done, and you have to have that leader. I've definitely worked for companies that was the three-headed monster, and you have to have a leader. That's the way it is. You can never have three equal parties. It just does not work. So it's going to be interesting. I was definitely happy to see Jamie Shuchuk sign back. I've always liked him. He's definitely a fan favorite, so fans were just ecstatic that he was back on the floor. We're going to have to see long term what he does. He definitely had a big impact on the first half, which we'll discuss in a minute. So I was happy to see him back, but only time's going to tell whether it was a good decision. I definitely think he's going to have more impact than Dean Hill. So, did you have anything to add to it, Tyler?
Yeah, I was somewhat surprised that they didn't have an immediate replacement named. Most of the time, of course, they usually lay off the head coach and then an assistant will get promoted. And this time they just cleared out almost everybody. To my knowledge, Dallas Elliott's still the goalie coach, but that's not like a game day impact really. But so to see like the waiting time to figure out what was going on, that was kind of odd in the middle of a week when they have games coming up. But I think they'll be all right. like, it's not at the NLL, but they've all got coaching experience, and they've all been there, won championships. They can demand the respect of the players. And I think they're in okay shape for right now.
And one other move this week, Philadelphia signed former Rock player Stephen Hoare, who was released by the Rock a few weeks ago. One of the things that Hoare brought to the table was ability to do face-offs, and he was kind of one of the Rock's two big face-off guys over the last couple of years. Now, I think this year he was in the mid-30s in percentages, so he wasn't having a great season face-off wise. So that may have been part of why the Rock decided to let him go. And then Philadelphia signed him. They've already got CJ Costabile, I'm not sure how to say his name, who is doing a very good job, as far as I can tell, of face-offs. But notably, Stephen Hoare took 5 face-offs in Philadelphia's game this weekend and won all 5. So 5 for 5 is not bad. So good job for him. Moving on, we do have a question from Scott Ludwig. Why would Colorado fire a head coach and then not hire anyone? Still half season left. Yeah, this is something that, Melissa, you mentioned. The idea of having 3 head coaches or 3 coaches rather than 1 head coach and 2 assistants. That does seem to be sort of an odd thing, an odd decision to make. I was assuming that Chris Gill was the head coach, and then Coyle would have been the defensive coach and Stroop the offensive coach. But that doesn't seem to be the way they've done it, at least for now. Maybe they will decide later to shuffle that around, or maybe they just said, look, you guys are the interim coaches, hold the fort down for 2 or 3 weeks while we figure out what we're going to do, and then either one of you will get the job or we'll hire Dave Pym or somebody else, and then it won't matter which one of you guys was the head coach. So I don't know if that was part of their decision making as well.
I agree. It really is strange, but I would also say that this isn't the first time the Mammoth have done this. I mean, Steve Govett coached the team for 3 games, I think, the last time. So it's not unheard of for him to fire somebody before he has a replacement. So it may be he had these guys in mind and he just wasn't sure who was going to be the better fit for head coach, and he's letting it play out. It definitely can't last all 3 of them equal positions the rest of the season. That is definitely, it can't happen.
All right, let's move on to the games of the week. First one, start in Buffalo as the Bandits defeat the Minnesota Swarm 12-9. I saw the first half of this game before I switched over to the Calgary, Colorado one, mainly because that one was on TV, so you get better. Nice to watch lacrosse in high def anyway. So I only saw the first half of this one, but I thought the Swarm looked pretty good. Zach Higgins was looking pretty sharp in the net. Swarm defense was looking pretty good. Obviously, Buffalo took over in the second half of the game. Sorry, I'm still working on this cold. I'm trying to avoid coughing. So I may have to clear my throat now and again. Anyway, Logan Schuss was looking pretty good. For a first overall draft pick, Schuss has kind of looked, I don't want to say less than impressive because he's been pretty good, but he hasn't. Now maybe Mark Matthews set an awfully high standard, so everybody's getting compared to him. But just looked pretty good in this one. I distinctly remember, I'm pretty sure it was his second goal. He basically sort of approached the net looking like he wasn't sure what he was going to do, whether it was going to shoot or pass. And then he kind of took the lacrosse equivalent of a wrist shot, where instead of reaching back and firing, he just kind of shot it. And it fooled the goalie completely, went right by him. Pretty nice shot. Melissa, you had some comments in as well. Did you see this game?
I did. This was looking at the score and then looking at the quarter breakdown. This was completely not the game I was expecting to watch. The Swarm looked really, really good, I thought, in the first half. Second half, I felt like they weren't quite as strong. The Bandits looked a little better, but the game was tied until there was like 3.5 or 4 minutes left, and then all of a sudden it was like the Bandits came out of nowhere, and the Swarm just couldn't seem to stop them, and they just scored, and really put the game out of reach. It was just like, whoa, where'd that come from? It had been so back and forth. It really, I thought it might go to overtime. It was interesting. I thought they looked very solid. They're definitely starting to, I think, gel as a team. But I think maybe the youth is hurting them. That it's some of those things that they're just not quite reading, or maybe they're being fooled on. I don't know, because the last 3 minutes was not what I was expecting. I mean, and 2 of the goals were from Stainhouse, so I mean, pretty good score there. But one thing I did find interesting, and we can talk about it in a later, I'm starting to wonder if the new jerseys just really don't hold up well. I can't remember with the old jerseys really seeing that many rip, and in the Priolo Suter fight, they both were just, like Superman pulling off his jersey, practically. It was interesting.
I've seen more rips this year. The Stealth had one in their first game. I think Justin Salt's fight, and in the past I've seen like 2, 3 ever, and now we're seeing them a lot quicker. I think they're trying to get lighter jerseys, realizing that even though they're just that far from the ice, it's warm out there, so a big heavy sweater doesn't make that much sense, and so something a little thinner breathes better, but tears way easier.
Yeah, that's how I was feeling. Like I haven't seen hardly any the whole time I've been watching lacrosse. And I was like, I feel like I've seen at least half a dozen this season. What about you, Graham?
I don't remember ever seeing that before, and I can't honestly say I really noticed it this year. I'll definitely try and take a look, try and pay a little more attention. But I don't remember seeing jerseys get ripped. I know I have 2 Rock jerseys. One is an actual replica, and one's kind of a fake one. And the replica one is pretty thick and pretty heavy, and it's also 10 or 11 years old. And just by the looks of things, it looks like the ones that they're wearing now are a lot lighter and thinner than the old heavy one. So it does stand to reason that they'd be easier to rip.
Yeah, the first jersey we ever got was Kyle Sorensen got in a fight with Mike Kilby in Calgary and just tore it from the V down to the logo, and they tried to patch it up and said it wasn't high enough quality. We just whispered in the ear, "What do you want? What do you want? What do you want?" And got our first jersey that way, nice game-worn fight jersey. That's pretty cool. Now there's a lot more chances for that. It felt unique at the time.
Okay, let's move on to our second game of the evening. I guess we had all 4 games in the same night, so we'll just take them in order. A couple of East games first and a couple of West games after. Philadelphia 8, Rochester 13. I didn't see any of this game. I meant to watch a little bit of it on Sunday, but I never had a chance. So Melissa, you've got some comments here, so why don't you take over?
Yeah, this was actually it was a pretty good game to begin with. The team seemed really evenly matched the first 3 quarters. The way it was going, I actually was kind of thinking this one might go to overtime. But the 4th quarter, I think, really showed the power of a challenge goal. The Wings, because the Nighthawks had gone on kind of a streak, and then the Wings scored, and it was challenged and then ruled no good. And it just seemed like the Wings just kind of lost their energy. Like they were still playing well, but there was something missing that they'd had the quarter previous. And even though they started kicking it back up towards the end, they just never quite found their momentum again. And it was like it just totally took the wind out of their sails. And Rochester they kept on that tear and just kept putting goals in, and the Wings just never quite came back. So I think even if, how we were talking a couple weeks ago, the mentality behind when you challenge a goal and when you don't, I think that one definitely had a secondary impact. That it really did. It just kind of took it out, even though it was like still a 1-goal game at that point. They just didn't seem to get anything back in them. Did you watch this one, Tyler?
I just caught a few minutes leading into the start time for the stealth, but it's right at this point with the challenge. So Philadelphia lost the goal. Felt like within 30 seconds, Cody Jamieson went down, scored another goal, and really turned the momentum, like you said. It was unfortunate. I mean, to see them battle for 3 quarters and then, I don't know if they got gassed or just the heart from losing the challenge, but to have that drastic of a change in the fourth quarter was a big one.
So I guess you could say that challenge took the wind out from beneath the wings. Sorry, had to be said. Okay, let's move on to the Calgary-Colorado game, which was the game of the night, I think. As you've mentioned a number of times, Melissa, the Mammoth looked like they took the first quarter off, though they didn't play terrible, but it did look kind of like it was going to be a runaway Calgary victory after they scored 5 in the first and Colorado scored nothing. I thought Colorado played a hell of a game after that. They played really well. The defense came together. Both Mike Poulin and Dylan Ward played really well. And Colorado scored the next 9 goals. So they certainly turned what could have been a strong Calgary win. Well, it looked like it was going to be a strong Colorado win after that, because then Calgary went for almost 40 minutes without scoring a goal. And then within 5 minutes, Calgary scores 4 to tie it up at 9 and send it to overtime. And considering this was Lacrosse Out Cancer Night, who better to score in overtime than Sean Pollock? After his wife Jenna went through breast cancer a couple of years ago, and that was kind of a big rallying point for the team, the fans, the whole league. Actually, I mean, everybody came together to support the Pollock family. So good on you, Sean Pollock, for scoring the winning goal on Lacrosse Out Cancer Night. So that was really nice. Melissa, I'm assuming you were there, or no? I guess you weren't there.
No, actually, I was.
Oh, you were.
It was one of those things. I wasn't sure if I was going to be there because I started my day about 4 a.m. I had a flight from Mexico City, and so landed, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not. But it was like, it's Calgary. These are always a good game, and I felt up to it. So yeah, we were actually there. So it was pretty awesome. Like you said, the first quarter was rough. It was definitely one of those things. Even though they were shut out in the first quarter, the Mammoth did actually score. They just were waved off. So it was good that even though they weren't scoring, they were still kind of scoring, because I think that kind of kept the morale up a little bit. I'm sure it frustrated the hell out of them because they're not getting anything on the board, but it at least was something. They didn't look as bad the first quarter as the score sheet kind of makes it sound, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was interesting. It was definitely one of those games that you never knew what was going to happen. Like you said, that Calgary was kind of dominant, and then all of a sudden Colorado just came back, and Dylan Ward was just nuts. I mean, some of the saves he made, it really made you go, where did that come from? Because that should not have been stopped. I mean, it was some amazing saves. And then the fact that, in the last 5 minutes, the game looks like it's in hand, and the Mammoths just took their foot off the gas a little bit, and Roughnecks were like, boom, boom, boom. And that was almost the game. I agree, it was very fitting that Pollock was the one that scored the game winner. I think it was definitely more meaningful since it was Lacrosse Out Cancer Night. He wasn't even sure if he was going to be playing because he'd injured himself in practice the night before. So the fact that not only did he play in a game that has become very important to him, he won the game. It was pretty cool. It was a fun game. It was very chippy. I think one thing that really sets the West games out from the East is the fights never really get to materialize. Often they're broken up before anything starts and they're put in the box. So there was a lot of fights. There was definitely a moment, I think, in the second quarter that I was half wondering, if we were going to have a repeat of the Albany Attack Mammoth game when we ended up having a bench clearing brawl because they just kept getting into it, and it was like right at the benches. So it was interesting. We had some humor on the night when Sean Evans decided to go up against Drew Westervelt, which was really kind of interesting in its own right because Drew was talking to another player or something, and Evans came around from the back of the crease and was just whack, 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 like a little brother or something, just hitting him. Just, like he's trying to be annoying, but it was definitely hard. Like it wasn't a light tap, I'm going to just, annoy you. He was trying to start something. And so then when they're lining up and Westervelt's just staring down at him, and it's like 5'8" versus 6'6". It was just like, really? I mean, you don't see it very often when, anyone goes after the taller guys, but it was definitely a moment of, what are you thinking? I mean, it looked very comical. Nothing materialized, but it was some humor. So, did either of you guys see this one?
Yeah, I went back and watched it on Sunday, and because when I heard the score was like 6-5 in the fourth, and then 10-9, I knew I had to see what was going on there. That scuffle in the second quarter in front of the benches, it was Casey Powell just went over and started beating up Dane Dobby. It was awesome. I mean, you hope to see something like that because he's such a little punk sometimes. And
he was being a punk that night too.
Casey Powell, of all people, you cross the line if you have to have Casey Powell come try to beat you up. Chet Konetsky played a great game. Usually he's a little hothead running wild, but he was more just closer to being an Energizer Bunny. He had hustle plays. He was stripping guys, kept in control, though, and it's one of the best games I've seen him play as a Mammoth. He actually produced quite a lot, even though as a defensive player, it's not like goals, but just good action. Other thing I noted, I was watching the game, was like, there are a lot of big names in this game, and they had every NL MVP since 2007, starting with John Grant, except for Dan Dawson was in this game. So it was basically star power on offense, no matter who had the ball. It was all great players. Ethan Iannucci got his first play in like a month. He got a big goal in the fourth and seemed to be playing a team offense, and he had a good outing.
Yeah, I definitely saw the Sean Evans thing. I was watching it on TV, and he, like you said, Westervelt was just kind of walking away from the play, and Evans came around and started hacking on him, and it almost looked like it was going to come to blows, and then the TV people said, "Okay, well, we'll be right back," and then they went off to commercial, and I'm like, "Really? You have to leave now? This would be the fight of the year. I'd want to see that," but I guess it didn't come to anything anyway.
Yeah, it didn't.
I do have. I wrote an article last year sometime with some of the. I can't remember what it was. I think it was the best players who played their whole career for one team, and one of the people on that list was Dan Ladouceur, who was also 6'6", and the picture I used for that was a picture of him and Sean Evans in a fight, and yeah, the picture's just weird because it's just Dan Dawson punching straight down because the guy he's fighting is a foot below him. So I was looking forward to that, but I guess that never happened.
Yeah, it didn't. There was definitely a lot of chippiness, and yeah, Dane Dobby was definitely, as you said, Tyler, kind of a punk. He was definitely getting into everything. Hartnett was really trying to get into stuff. Like, he was doing some cheap plays. So I'm kind of surprised more didn't come of that, but it was an interesting game. The team was fired up. I saw more hustle than I think I've seen all season. I'm just hoping it's not a one-off.
So I guess the question that we'll hopefully get answered next weekend is, was that the team playing well for their new coaches, or was that team playing well to say, hey, you shouldn't have fired Bob Hamley, or is that just holy crap, they shook stuff up, let's change the way we're playing. I guess we'll find out.
I actually liked my
Find out
husband.
next week, depending
Uh,
how the Mammoth play next week.
I really liked what my husband kind of said about it. He said it looked like
Game
everybody was
weekend,
fighting for a spot on their
um,
team.
and this was Vancouver. And that's what you want to see.
You do. You want to see them fighting for a spot that they don't feel just because it's midseason. It's guaranteed.
Okay, so back to the Edmonton-Vancouver game. Considering Edmonton was undefeated. Okay, so we've got some lag going on here. Um, considering Edmonton was undefeated and Vancouver was had not been playing well for a while, it was about as close to that Edmonton was going to win this game. But Vancouver put up a hell of a fight.
All right, we're losing Graham there. So I'll go ahead and take over, as this was my mighty stealth playing. The first game in 2 weeks that they had, freaking 3 weeks. They had 2 weeks off in a row, not just a bye week, but they had 2 bye weeks. And not, well, due to that some change we talked about, they had Kyle Sorensen and Chris O'Rourke go to the injured reserve list with knee surgeries. Brought in Brad Richardson and Jamie Lincoln. It was our first chance to see them. But the big news that we couldn't fully prepare for was that Lewis Ratcliffe was a healthy scratch for the first time in his career. And I say I wasn't surprised. On Twitter, I've been lamenting his production so far this year. The guy's a franchise player, not putting up franchise level points. So to keep him out there, I don't know how they could have kept it going for this long. And they finally sat him for one game, and I liked the flow of the offense. The ball never really seemed to die in anybody's stick. It just was always moving. No, they did all right. I liked what I saw. I mean, it was a bummer that they lost, but they took a lead into the start of the fourth quarter. And I think they also had a situation with a challenge on a Reese Dutch goal that was called back, and from that point on, Edmonton took control. I don't like losing, but I mean, you lose to a good team, and the forced turnovers, at least for wasn't as one-sided as it was a week ago. And the Rush put up like 21-7 or something, and this game was 21-14. The Stealth were also able to pressure the Rush and not just be dominated, and I liked how that turned out. I mean, you lose by 1 goal twice to an undefeated team. The Stealth are in a good spot to play the second half of the season. They have another bye week coming up. I don't like that. 1 game in a month is incredible to have that kind of scheduling. But with the roster they had out there, a little time for some continuity on the offense with the lefty shooters bringing Jamie Lincoln in. I like the team. They can make a run at Colorado to try to get that third playoff spot. Did you get to see this game, Melissa?
I did. This was a good game. I definitely thought, like you said, that the flow was really good. They looked solid. It didn't look like Edmonton was slacking off or anything, and that's why the Stealth were playing. It looked like both teams were just playing hard and just playing good lacrosse. I mean, there was definitely a lot of posts. I think the post shots really could have changed the flow of the game very quickly if those would have just gone one little bit more the right direction. It was a good game. I was definitely happy when I saw the Stealth sign Jamie Lincoln. I liked Lincoln. I think he definitely, in the right system, can probably shine, and I hope he does well with the stealth. I don't think Brad Richardson was given nearly enough time on the Mammoth, so the fact that they picked up 2 players, and as we've seen around the league, a lot of the players that the Mammoth got seem to really do well with the other teams. So that might actually become a very dangerous offense there. It sounded like, at least what the announcers made it sound like there were some injuries that might be long term from the rush. So we'll have to wait to see on that. But it was a good game. I felt like they were fired up. They had hustle. They didn't look like they were outmatched or outplayed. I thought it was just a good, solid game. The announced attendance for the rush was 78-98, which it looked pretty full in the bottom bowl, so hopefully it's a good sign too. Did you see this one, Graham?
I saw bits of it. Sorry, something went wrong with the network there, and I just dropped out entirely. So yeah, I saw bits of it. Like you said, I thought Vancouver's play was really good, especially considering their play in the last few games. They haven't been doing too well. But yeah, I guess I was surprised that I didn't see Lewis Ratcliffe's name after the game, and I guess I didn't notice the fact that he wasn't there. So I don't know if that I didn't hear whether he was a healthy scratch or whether he had any kind of injury or work-related thing or anything like that. And because of the network thing, I didn't hear most of your comments. Tyler, do you know, was he a healthy scratch?
Healthy scratch. They said it was kind of performance-based.
Well, that's what you've been asking for a couple of weeks. So maybe we'll see what happens when he comes back next week. I guess Ethan Iannucci was kind of the same thing for the Mammoth for the previous few weeks, and he came out and played a pretty strong game. So maybe we'll see the same thing from Lewis.
Yeah, at some point you gotta put up the points that you're paid to be out there, or play the team game that you're paid to be out there.
Okay. Melissa wanted to discuss an interesting concept, and that is the concept of the second assist, and how valuable is that, and how meaningful is that. And I've got some stats that I will try to put up. Let's see if I can make this work. That one, go. Okay, so we've got some numbers here. These numbers are a week old, and I'm sorry I never got to update them to include last week's games. So this is from the week before. So this is just the ranking, top 10 people with the most second assists. And as we can see, Ryan Ward is at the top of the list here. Out of his 28 assists, 18 of them are the second assist. Ryan Benesh is up there, Reese Dutch is up there, Cody Jamieson, Garrett Billings. Basically anybody who's got lots of assists is going to have lots of second assists, and that makes sense. The percentage varies all over the place. So as we can see, Ryan Ward has the highest percentage of 64% of his assists are second assists. Or if you look down here, somebody like Garrett Billings, John Grant, Dan Dawson have lots of assists, but only 34 to 37% of their assists are second. Just to put it a different way, if the second assist was eliminated, this would be the top 10 in scoring in the league. John Grant, like I said, this is a week old. John Grant would still be in first. Sean Evans would be in second instead of third. Reese Dutch would be in third instead of second. It's not a whole lot of movement around the top few here until we get down to the 7 to 10 area. Mark Stainhouse is currently tied for 20th in scoring, and he'd make the top 10. Tyler Digby is currently tied for 15th, and he'd be tied for 7th. Okay, so this third table here is the current scoring, so again, current being a week old, and what the ranking would be if the second assist was eliminated. So there's Ryan Ward in 10th place in scoring, and without that second assist, he'd be tied for 28th. Ryan Beneshins would go from 7th down to 17th, and Cody Jamieson would go from 7th down to 13th. Whereas the top 6 would move around a little bit, but really not much of a difference. So, okay, let's see how I can turn this off now. Hey, there we go. Okay, so there's some interesting numbers, and I think Melissa, the reason you brought this up to begin with was that you were under the impression that John Grant had a whole lot of second assists and not as many firsts.
Well, it definitely feels like he does, but it just kind of makes you curious. It's a discussion that sometimes, especially during the off season when we have very little to talk about, that it comes up every few years. You know, if the second assists were removed, would somebody still be the points leader or as dominant on the offense, you know, as they appear to be? And John Grant Jr. is definitely one that does have a lot of second assists. He has a lot of assists as well as goals. So it was definitely a curiosity. What impact would it have? I thought it was very interesting. Like you said, you remove those, and Ryan Ward suddenly goes from top 10 to really low. So it's definitely interesting to see who has a lot of the impact. You know, even when they're not scoring, it's very interesting. We'll have to see if we can find a way to get this shared on the website. Did you have any comments, Tyler?
Yeah, it's cool to see the breakdown. Like Garrett Billings, I definitely saw him as a setup man getting those first assists, and 2/3 of his assists are that way. I was amazed at the Ryan Ward number to see it's the opposite, where 2/3 are second assists. And I mean, he's helping move the ball, but if you took those away, would people consider him to be a valuable player that he is? You consider him to be solid and productive, but he's producing second assists. It's interesting.
The whole concept of the second assist, I guess, is somewhat arbitrary. I mean, the idea of the assist is, yeah, you didn't score the goal, but you directly helped the guy who did. And the second assist is, well, you helped the guy who scored the goal. And sometimes that's definitely a direct thing, in that you've got 3 guys passing the ball around, and the guy who gets the second assist just happens to pass it to the first guy instead of to the goal scorer, so not a big deal. Other times, the guy who gets the second assist just happened to toss the ball up the floor, and instead of passing the ball around a bunch of times, they only passed it once and got the goal, and the guy who actually got the second assist is sitting on the bench when the goal was scored. Was he really involved in the play? Not really. He just passed the ball to the guys who started the play, and the play happened to be short. So sometimes it seems pretty arbitrary, but you either give one assist and that's it, or you give assists all the way back and say, okay, well, there were 7 assists on that play, and then you start making it a judgment call, and then it gets messy. So I guess the second assist makes some sense, and that's what they do in hockey as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I assume it's rooted in the hockey scoring system, where there they have so few goals that a second assist actually kind of gets some stats to talk about. But with lacrosse, it feels unnecessary. We already have so many points as it is. To go for the second assist just because that's what they've always done, or that's what maybe it was rooted in hockey, we don't necessarily need it anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's always been that way. Whether or not that's a useful or a logical argument is pretty strong, and it's going to take a lot to overcome that. Especially when you take that away, and suddenly the guy who's leading the league with 100 points only has 75 points, and nobody's getting any higher than that, because those second assists just aren't coming in.
Yeah, they used to only play baseball in day games, but they can make changes. But to have the impact of the scoring records the season following a change like that would be incredible. Like, nobody would ever touch a scoring record again. They'd have like reset. It'd be really interesting, the impacts if they were to move forward to change that dramatic.
I guess we're going to see some of that this year, in that we've got an extra 2 games this year. So somebody pulling off 110, 115 points is going to be, pretty impressive, but not record-setting like it was. Like if you get under the 110, I mean, how many people have gotten 110 plus points? There might have been 5 or 6 or 7 seasons ever with that, and we might see a handful of people get that this year just because there's an extra 2 games to do it in.
Well,
Okay, so
this is probably
sorry,
why
Melissa.
this comes up. Oh, sorry, this is probably why this comes up quite frequently. Is like we were saying, it doesn't seem like there is that much impact from the second assist. I mean, there's definitely times that you'll see a play and it's like that second assist was definitely part of that goal, but other times it does. It seems so coincidental that I think this was definitely. It wasn't necessarily the results I was expecting, but it was very interesting. I think the fact that the top 5 to 7, it really didn't seem to impact. That shows that those guys are producers. No matter how you look at it, they are producing. But it definitely makes you wonder about some of these players that normally you wouldn't even consider as being good might be a little better than some of the guys that are getting more recognition.
I wonder if you'll get the most opposition for something like that from people like the goalies and the defensive players who never make it on the other side of the floor. I think there was one year where Mike Poulin had, I don't know, 8 or 9 assists or something on the season, and I would guess that the vast majority of those were the second assists. So that's other than the goalie fires it up to somebody on transition who scores, the only assists the goalie's ever going to get are likely going to be the second assist.
Very interesting.
Okay, let's move on to our predictions from last week. We all had pretty good weeks. Well, we all made the same predictions, so I guess we were all going to sink or swim together. And I guess we were swimming. We all went 3-1. Which one did we miss?
Probably the Colorado game.
I guess we all picked Calgary in that one. That's right. Yeah, so overall, Tyler is in the lead at 33-13. I'm 1 game behind him at 32-14, and Melissa's not far behind at 27-19. And as we mentioned, I guess this will be the week, or this could be the week anyway, that Melissa catches up, depending on how things go. Melissa, I guess I'll let you go first.
Let's see. With Edmonton and Calgary, that one, it was a tough one. And I think with Edmonton still riding with that perfect game, you're kind of, every week you're wondering, is this going to be the week that they fall? And I think Calgary's playing well enough that they could do it. But, I'm going to go with the perfect record. It's kind of hard to bet against them right now. They're just playing so well. And last week, the way Calgary was with Toronto, that they kind of slacked for a little bit, and Toronto started coming back. There's that chance they could do that with Edmonton, even if they do start winning. So I'm going to go with Edmonton. Rochester and Toronto was a toughie, but Toronto is just playing so inconsistent right now. I think they have the talent to do it. I just don't know which team's going to show up that night. So we're going to go with Rochester. And let's see. Colorado and Buffalo was a tough one for me. I think if the Colorado team that played Saturday shows up, then it's going to be a really good game, and I think Colorado can take it. If the Colorado team that has been showing up is the one that plays, then Buffalo has this one in the bag, just plain and simple. But we're going to go with Colorado because I want to be optimistic, and I think the team that I saw Saturday, if it has the potential for being there again. Philly and Rochester, I went with Philly. I think Rochester having the back-to-back just is probably going to be rough on them, and Philly not playing is probably going to help them, and they're playing as a strong team this year. Toronto and Minnesota, the same thing as I just said. Toronto's playing inconsistent, and yet on top of that, a back-to-back game. I think Swarm being younger and just a little more energy, I think even if Toronto is leading the game, the Swarm could definitely take it that last quarter. I think they're just going to have the stamina to do it. So, who wants to go next?
Go ahead, Graham.
Okay. Okay. So Edmonton, Calgary. Yeah, I think if anybody in this league can take out Edmonton and stop the streak, it's going to be Calgary. But I still, excuse me, I still have to play the odds and say Edmonton. Um, but I'm looking forward to watching that game. Rochester and Toronto. I hate picking against my beloved Rock, but I have to agree with you, Melissa. Their play has been inconsistent. Um, they played pretty well against Edmonton and just got beat by a better team. And then they played mostly crappy, but with some moments of playing pretty well against Calgary. But I'm gonna have to go with Rochester on that one. Colorado Buffalo, again, I agree with you, Melissa. If the Colorado team that played Calgary shows up and plays that well, then they can certainly beat the Bandits. But I think the Bandits, and I wish I had the numbers here. They're on a streak. I think they've won a bunch of games in a row anyway. And I think their confidence is really high. Anthony Cosmo's playing really well. Dane Smith, as far as I can tell, is still playing lots of defense and still putting up a ton of points. I'm not sure how exactly he's doing that. But the Buffalo offense is looking really strong. So I'm gonna have to go with Buffalo there. Rochester, Philly. Yeah, I find it hard to. I've said this before. I find it hard to bet against Matt Vince and the Rochester defense. Philadelphia has played better than I thought they would this year. That Garrett Thule guy is pretty dangerous looking and big. And if Kevin Crowley can get things going, he's been playing okay, but not. I think he's kind of not playing up to how he has in the last couple of years. So if he can get things going, then Philly could be pretty strong. But I have to go for Rochester in that one. And Toronto, Minnesota. Like you said, Melissa, even if Toronto's leading this game, Minnesota could come back at the end of the game, which they did a couple weeks ago. They didn't quite come back far enough, and Toronto ended up winning that game. But the last 5 minutes of that game were quite nerve-wracking. This one's going to be in Minnesota, so the same thing could happen. But I had to put a little bit of homer in there, and I went with the Rock on that one. Tyler, you're up.
All right, some difficult picks this week compared to the last few. I think one thing I noticed last week when I checked the stats is the NL Insider picks. I was ahead of everybody by one game. So I'm really, really proud of myself, and may not be that way may not be that way later, but at the halfway point, I'm celebrating. Edmonton at Calgary. Calgary and Colorado is a big rivalry game, and they beat each other up all through that game. Calgary's going to be quite sore, even getting a week off. Edmonton, they got to figure out what's up with Riley Lowen. I'm pretty sure he'll be out. His shoulder looked totally messed up. But after that point, they still rallied. They can bring Alex Turner into play. At Calgary, I'm still going to go with Edmonton. They're just too top-notch right now. They're better than everybody by a bit. Rochester at Toronto, going with Matt Vince. It can be a great game, but Graham said it, and I stick with it. Matt Vince is the solid pick out of everything on the floor. Colorado at Buffalo. I'm excited to see Chet Koneski's return to Buffalo after flipping them all off last year. That was a classic move. But I'm going to have Buffalo win that game. They're not really showing too much weakness. Maybe a little inconsistency at the start of the year with Cosmo's play, but he's settled down now, and they look like a good team. Rochester at Philly. Rochester's got 2 road games this weekend, but I think they can just go into Philly and take the win. They beat them last weekend. They can do it again. They'll know what to do and be ready to go. I agree that Kevin Crowley's not producing, or seems like he should kind of be quarterbacking their offense, but he's not. And the hardest one of the week for me was Toronto at Minnesota. Minnesota just seems like they should be better than their record, but their wins haven't come against Toronto, and they put up a good game, but I think Toronto can just kind of warm up the night before and be in better shape to go this weekend when they meet on Sunday. So I picked Toronto to win there. And that's my picks.
All right. And just to clarify what I had said before, I thought the Bandits were on a long winning streak, and that winning streak is currently 2. They had won 5 in a row, which is what I was thinking of, but then I forgot that they lost to Rochester. But I mean, they're 7-2 on the season and 7-1 in their last 8 games. So yeah, so they're not on a huge streak right now, but still playing with a lot of confidence, I think. So anyway, I guess that will do it for this week's show. Whoops, sorry, I'm clicking things here. Okay, Melissa, you had a couple of things you want to say?
Actually, I did. First off, I was wondering, did either of you guys hear anything about what was with the blue Rush jerseys? I didn't see anything on their website, and during the cast, they mentioned they were wearing a special jersey, but they never mentioned why.
They were celebrating recycling, is the best I could make of it. Pretty good looking jerseys.
They were nice jerseys. I like them. It was a sponsored thing, and I don't remember the name of the company, but they did show the logo at one point during the game. But I don't think they mentioned anything on it on the telecast. But Teddy Jenner tweeted the team, and they tweeted back saying that it was a sponsored jersey from some local company. But they're pretty slick looking.
Yeah, I definitely like the blue. I mean, we just have so much black and white and red in the league. It was like, wow, where'd those come from? And the fact they didn't mention it, so I wasn't sure if it was for charity or something. And one thing I did really want to comment on is I really liked the announcing team for the Vancouver-Edmonton game. I actually had to check a couple of times because they were so evenly balanced that I was kind of forgetting where the game was being played. And I thought that was really good because there's so many of the teams that they're beyond homer almost. I mean, it's one thing to favor your team a little bit, but when everything you say is completely negative toward the other team, even when there's a beautiful play, and you know, when you have that bias, it kind of can be grating, even when you're not a fan of either team. And so for me, it was really nice just having this well-balanced cast that when the Stealth made a good play, they were just as excited about it as when the Rush did, and they weren't afraid to say, I think the Rush got away with, a bad play there, a high stick or something like that. They weren't just focusing on the Stealth doing it. So I thought it was really good. So I don't know if you guys were able to hear it and what you thought, but I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I think that guy's name is Jason Greger. He's their main play-by-play, and he's been doing it for, I think, as long as they've had the team. I can remember the phrase he always uses, they headman the ball whenever they're passing the ball up, and he's the only guy that says that. And so you hear that, and he's calling the game, and he's been doing it a long time. And I agree. He's great. He likes to see a good game. He doesn't really care if it's the Rush. He's probably been through so much with the Rush not winning games that he's excited they are, but he just appreciates good action.
It's certainly nice to see if you can watch a game and not know who the announcers are rooting for. That's certainly a plus. And a lot of times you can tell who they're rooting for because they just announce one team's goals a little louder than the other teams. They get excited about it, and you can't really blame them for that. But what I don't like to hear is, like you said, when somebody makes a really good play and they just kind of say, oh, that was a good play, and then somebody on their team makes a good play and they're talking about it like it's the play of the year, or things like, there was even one, was it in the Calgary-Colorado game? It might have been, where somebody took a hit and went down and stayed on the floor for a minute and then got up and ran away, and the announcer clearly said, well, there's a dive for you. I I don't like to see that. Even if it is a clear dive, I'd kind of prefer that the announcers just kind of keep that to themselves, particularly if it's somebody on the other team. And
Yeah,
yeah, that kind of thing bothers me.
that's the Josh Gross from the Mammoth. He's been with the team. He's been in the game like 10 years too, and I think he's reached a point where he's a part of their media team. He's like an employee of the team, knows all the players, but knows them so well. He's not just calling their games when he sees them. He hangs out with them all week and then calls their game, and he's really excited for them. So he totally leans on the players and praises them and sells the Mammoth experience versus the game experience. He's not like the NFL where they just fly 2 announcers to every game and they just call that week's games and they don't really care. He's the Mammoth guy, and you can tell.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that our team has been getting a little more homer the past couple seasons because it used to be a pretty well-balanced team. So I
Yeah.
don't know if the guy who I'm drawing a blank on his name since I haven't watched too many of the games on the TV lately. We used to rewatch the games all the time, and past couple seasons I haven't done that. Maybe it's bringing it more out of him. I don't know. I definitely am one. I like a well-balanced team. When I don't mind when they show a little favoritism. Like you said, Graham, where they're just a little more exuberant on their team's goals, and but when it's so one-sided, it's like, no, you got to remember that you got more than just your audience. And so it's nice
Yeah.
to see that some of that is getting a little more neutral around the league. I mean, there's definitely some that it's like every time they're on, I practically want to mute it because they're just so one-sided. Even if I don't really have a favorite between the two teams, it's just like I like a well-balanced game when it's called. So I just wanted to make sure and bring that up because it's so easy to really just pick out the negative and focus on it and talk about it. But it was just so good that I really wanted to mention that.
Okay, so shout out to the Edmonton team who did that game. Quick shout out to Dave Walls as well, who's the guy who does the Philadelphia Wings games. And I think he does a good job. He's obviously he's one of these guys who, like I said, is a little louder for Philadelphia goals than he is for the opposing goals, and that's fine. But when somebody on the opposing team scores a really beautiful goal, he'll say it's a really beautiful goal. And the tough thing for Dave is that he does it by himself. There's no play-by-play guy and color guy. He's both. So he's in the booth just basically talking by himself for the whole game. So that's got to be tough to do. Okay, I guess that's it for this show. If you want to find previous shows, as well as this one that will be up soon, you can head over to addictedtolacrosse.com. That's where all of our other shows are archived. If you want to send us some feedback, whether it's questions or comments or constructive criticism or anything other than you guys suck, you can send it to feedback@addictedtolacrosse.com. You can also tweet us any questions or comments or criticism, as I said. LAX Podcast is where we can be found on Twitter. Each of the three of us is on Twitter as well, and our handles are on the screen during the show. So there's lots of ways to get in touch with us and give us your feedback. So we will see you next Monday after week 12. So good night, and we will see you then.